What if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do when someone disrespects you isn't to fight back, argue, or prove your point? What if the real power lies in doing absolutely nothing at all? We live in a world where everyone's screaming for attention. People post their drama online, send paragraph after paragraph, trying to explain their feelings, and chase after validation like it's oxygen. But here's the brutal truth that most people refuse to accept. The moment you start chasing, begging, or over-explaining yourself, you've already lost. You've handed your power to someone else and said, "Here, control how I feel today." But there's another way, a way that the ancient Stoics mastered thousands of years ago, a way that doesn't require you to say a single word, yet speaks volumes about who you are. It's called strategic silence, and it's the most underestimated weapon in human psychology. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man of his time, understood this deeply. He didn't rule through loud declarations or desperate attempts to be understood. He ruled through presence, through dignity, through the kind of quiet strength that made people lean in to listen. And when he chose not to respond, that silence carried more weight than any speech ever could. Today we're diving deep into why silence isn't just golden, it's revolutionary. This isn't about being passive or weak. This is about understanding that sometimes the most aggressive thing you can do is refuse to engage. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is saying nothing at all. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you've ever found yourself typing out long messages trying to explain your worth to someone, if you've ever chased someone who clearly didn't want to be caught, if you've ever felt the urge to defend yourself to people who already made up their minds about you, then this video is your wake-up call. Hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, don't skip any part, because what I'm about to share could completely change how you show up in the world. The first truth we need to understand is this: your silence is not empty space. It's not weakness. It's not giving up. Your silence is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. When you stop talking, stop explaining, stop defending, you force people to confront something they've been avoiding: themselves. Think about the last time someone hurt you. Maybe they betrayed your trust. Maybe they ghosted you. Maybe they disrespected you in front of others. Your first instinct was probably to confront them, right? To make them understand how their actions affected you. To get that closure, that explanation, that apology you felt you deserved. But here's what really happens when you chase that conversation. You end up talking to someone who's already made peace with hurting you. You end up explaining your worth to someone who's already decided you're not worth their respect. You end up begging for understanding from someone who's chosen not to understand. That's not strength. That's self-betrayal. Epictetus, who went from being a slave to one of the greatest philosophers in history, understood this better than anyone. He taught that true freedom comes not from controlling others, but from controlling your own responses. And sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. When you choose silence in moments where others expect you to react, something fascinating happens. The power dynamic completely shifts. Suddenly, you're not the one seeking validation. You're not the one who needs answers. You become the one who holds all the cards, because you're not playing their emotional game anymore. But let's be clear about what kind of silence we're talking about here. This isn't the silent treatment born from spite or manipulation. This isn't about punishing people or playing games. This is about strategic withdrawal. This is about recognizing when your words are being wasted on deaf ears and choosing to preserve your energy for something more valuable: your peace. See, most people think silence means you don't care, but the Stoics knew better. Sometimes silence means you care too much about your own well-being to keep bleeding in front of people who refuse to help you heal. Sometimes silence means you respect yourself too much to keep explaining your worth to people who are determined not to see it. There's a reason why silence makes people so uncomfortable. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own actions, their own guilt. When you stop filling the space with words, explanations, and justifications, they have to fill it themselves. And what they fill it with reveals everything about who they really are. The person who truly respects you will notice your silence and reach out with genuine concern. The person who was using you will disappear because they no longer have access to your energy. The person who is manipulating you will get frustrated because they've lost control over your emotions. Your silence becomes a filter. It separates the people who deserve your voice from those who don't. It shows you who was there for you and who was just there for what you could give them. But here's where most people struggle. They think staying silent means being weak. They think it means letting people walk all over them. They think it means giving up or giving in. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Real strength isn't in the volume of your voice. It's in the discipline of knowing when to use it and when to keep it to yourself. Real power isn't in forcing people to listen to you. It's in being so grounded in your own worth that you don't need their validation to feel whole. When you master the art of strategic silence, you develop something that most people never achieve: emotional independence. You stop being a slave to other people's opinions, reactions, and behaviors. You stop needing external validation to feel good about yourself. You stop requiring closure from others because you learn to give it to yourself. This is what the Stoics called inner citadel. It's that unshakable core within you that remains calm regardless of the storms happening around you. It's the part of you that doesn't need to justify itself to anyone because it knows its own worth. And here's the beautiful irony. The less you need people to understand you, the more they want to. The less you chase their attention, the more they notice your absence. The less you explain yourself, the more they wonder what you're thinking. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates intrigue. When you stop being an open book that everyone can read whenever they want, you become something much more valuable. You become someone worth pursuing, instead of someone who's always pursuing others. But this journey isn't easy. Every fiber of your being will want to react when someone pushes your buttons. Every instinct will scream at you to defend yourself when you're misunderstood. Every emotion will demand that you fight back when you're disrespected. That's when you need to remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. He understood that getting caught up in other people's drama, other people's opinions, other people's judgments, was a waste of precious mental energy. Your silence isn't about them. It's about you. It's about protecting your peace, preserving your dignity, and choosing your battles wisely. Not every fight deserves your participation. Not every argument deserves your voice. Not every person deserves your explanation. When you embrace this truth, you start to move through life differently. You stop being reactive and start being responsive. You stop being emotional and start being strategic. You stop being desperate and start being selective. People notice this shift immediately. There's something magnetic about someone who doesn't need to prove themselves to everyone they meet. There's something powerful about a person who can sit comfortably in silence while others fill the air with unnecessary noise. This is just the beginning of understanding how silence can transform your life. In the next part, We'll dive deeper into the specific situations where silence is your greatest weapon, and how to use it without falling into the trap of passive aggression or emotional manipulation. But for now, I want you to start paying attention to your own patterns. Notice how often you feel the urge to explain yourself to people who aren't really listening. Notice how many times you chase conversations with people who clearly don't want to have them. Notice how much energy you waste trying to convince people of your worth instead of simply embodying it. Because once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. And once you can't unsee them, you'll never go back to giving your power away so easily. The Stoics taught us that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. And sometimes the most powerful response is the one that never gets spoken out loud. Remember this fundamental truth. Your silence speaks a language that words never could. It communicates self-respect, emotional maturity, and inner strength without you having to say a single syllable. But most importantly, it forces people to confront the weight of their own actions without you having to point them out. Let me share something that will change how you see every interaction moving forward. When someone treats you poorly and you respond with silence, you're not just refusing to engage. You're creating space for the truth to emerge naturally. Because here's what happens in that space. Their conscience starts talking to them in ways your words never could. Think about it this way. When you argue with someone who disrespected you, you give them something to focus on other than their behavior. They can attack your words, twist your meaning, make you the problem, but when you say nothing, they're left alone with the echo of their actions. That silence haunts them because it reflects back exactly what they gave you. Nothing. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about this principle. He understood that engaging with people who operate from a place of disrespect is like trying to have a rational conversation with someone who's screaming. The volume drowns out any possibility of real communication. But when you lower your voice to silence, something interesting happens. They have to stop screaming to hear if you're still there. And in that moment of quiet, they're forced to listen to themselves. And most of the time, they don't like what they hear. This is why your silence is so threatening to people who are used to controlling others through emotional manipulation. These are the people who throw tantrums when they don't get their way, who use guilt trips and dramatic outbursts to get attention, who create chaos just to make themselves the center of someone's world. Your silence breaks their entire playbook. They can't manipulate what won't respond. They can't control what won't engage. They can't win a game you refuse to play. But let's talk about what silence looks like in real situations, because this isn't just philosophy. This is practical wisdom that you can apply immediately. When someone ghosts you after weeks or months of consistent communication, your instinct might be to send that double text, maybe triple text, maybe that long paragraph explaining how their behavior made you feel. But what if instead you simply matched their energy? What if you gave them exactly what they gave you? Silence, not because you're playing games, but because you're honoring the boundary they set with their actions. They showed you through their silence that they don't value your communication. Your silence shows them that you heard the message loud and clear, and you respect yourself too much to beg for what should be freely given. When someone cancels plans last minute for the third time, you might want to call them out, make them explain themselves, make them feel guilty for wasting your time. But what if you just said nothing? What if you simply stopped making plans with them? Your silence becomes the consequence. Your absence becomes the lesson. When someone spreads rumors about you or talks behind your back, every cell in your body might want to defend yourself, set the record straight, make sure everyone knows the truth. But here's the thing about defending yourself against lies. The more you defend, the more you give credibility to the accusation. Your silence says something far more powerful. It says, I don't need to convince anyone of who I am because I know who I am. People who know you will never believe the lies. People who don't know you don't matter. And people who choose to believe lies about you without asking for your side of the story have shown you exactly who they are. Your silence saves you from wasting energy on people who were never really on your side anyway. This is what emotional sovereignty looks like. It's the understanding that you don't need to participate in every conflict you're invited to. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to explain yourself to every person who misunderstands you. Your energy is finite. Your time is limited. Your peace is precious. And the Stoics understood that protecting these resources is not selfish. It's essential. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, commanded armies, and dealt with betrayals that would crush most people. Yet in his private writings, he constantly reminded himself of this truth. Confine yourself to the present, not the past conversation that went wrong, not the future explanation you think you need to give. The present moment, and what serves you in this moment. In this moment, does explaining yourself to someone who's already made up their mind serve you? In this moment, does chasing someone who's clearly walking, does defending yourself to people who enjoy seeing you struggle serve you? The away serve you? In this moment, answer is almost always no. Your silence becomes a boundary that protects your energy from being drained by people who don't deserve access to it. It becomes a filter that separates those who are worthy of your words from those who have proven they're not. But here's where it gets even more powerful. When you consistently choose silence over reaction, you start to develop something that most people never achieve. You develop emotional immunity to other people's behavior. You stop taking things personally because you understand that how people treat you says everything about them and nothing about you. You stop needing closure from others because you learn to give it to yourself. You stop requiring apologies because you realize that someone who truly hurt you probably isn't capable of giving you the apology you deserve anyway. This doesn't mean you become cold or heartless. It means you become selective. It means you save your emotional investment for people who've proven they're worthy of it. It means you stop casting pearls before swine, as the saying goes. Your silence isn't rejection. It's discernment. Your silence isn't punishment. It's protection. Your silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And the beautiful thing about developing this level of emotional discipline is that it changes everything. Not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. You start to respect yourself more because you're no longer volunteering for disrespect. You start to trust yourself more because you're honoring your own boundaries. You start to love yourself more because you're treating yourself with the same care you would give to someone precious to you. Because you are precious. Your words are precious. Your energy is precious. Your attention is precious. And precious things shouldn't be given away to anyone who asks for them. They should be earned, treasured, and reciprocated. When you truly understand this, you stop begging people to see your worth. You start embodying it so completely that only people who can match that energy even register on your radar. This is the power of silence, not as a weapon, but as a shield, not as punishment, but as protection, not as an ending, but as a beginning. the beginning of a life where you stop giving your power away to people who never deserved it in the first place. The third principle of strategic silence is understanding that your worth doesn't require a PowerPoint presentation. You don't need to build a case for why you deserve respect. You don't need to submit evidence of your value to a jury of people who've already decided not to see it. Most people live their entire lives trying to convince others of their worth. They list their accomplishments, explain their good intentions, justify their decisions, and defend their character to anyone who questions it. But here's what the Stoics knew, that most people don't. The moment you start explaining your worth, you've already devalued it. Think about anything truly valuable in this world. Does gold announce itself? Does a diamond argue for its brilliance? Does the ocean explain why it's deep? No. They simply are what they are, and their value speaks for itself. Your worth operates the same way. It doesn't need a spokesperson. It doesn't need marketing. It doesn't need to be sold to people who can't see it naturally. When you understand this at a cellular level, you stop participating in conversations where you have to prove your humanity to people who should already recognize it. But society has programmed us to believe the opposite. We're taught that if someone doesn't understand us, we need to explain harder. If someone doesn't appreciate us, we need to show them more reasons why they should. If someone walks away from us, we need to chase them down and convince them to stay. This is backwards thinking, and it creates backwards results. The more you explain your worth, the less people value it. The more you chase someone's attention, the less attractive you become. The more you beg for understanding, the less likely you are to receive it. Your silence breaks this cycle completely. It says, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm not here to prove my worth to you. I'm not here to make you see what you're choosing not to see. I'm simply here. And if you can't appreciate that, then you're not my person. This level of self-respect is so rare in today's world that it becomes magnetic. People are so used to others chasing them, explaining to them, seeking their approval, that when they encounter someone who doesn't need any of that, it stops them in their tracks. But let's talk about what happens inside you when you start living this way. Because the external changes are just the beginning. The real transformation happens in your relationship with yourself. When you stop seeking validation from others, you start validating yourself. When you stop explaining your choices to people who don't respect them, you start trusting your own judgment more deeply. When you stop begging for love and attention, you start giving it to yourself in ways that actually fill you up. This is what self-sovereignty looks like. It's the understanding that you are complete within yourself. You don't need someone else's approval to approve of yourself. You don't need someone else's love to love yourself. You don't need someone else's respect to respect yourself. Epictetus taught his students that no one can hurt you without your permission. But most people misunderstand what this means. They think it means you should never feel pain when someone mistreats you. But that's not human. That's not even healthy. What it really means is that you don't have to let their treatment of you become your treatment of yourself. You don't have to internalize their disrespect and make it your identity. You don't have to carry their rejection and make it your reality. Your silence becomes the space between their actions and your identity. It's the pause that prevents their behavior from becoming your belief system about yourself. It's the buffer that protects your self-worth from being influenced by people who don't even know their own worth. When someone treats you poorly and you respond with silence, you're not just refusing to engage with them. You're refusing to engage with the part of yourself that wants to believe their treatment of you means something about who you are. Because here's the truth that will set you free. How people treat you has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Their capacity for respect, kindness, loyalty, and love is determined by their own inner world, not by anything you did or didn't do. When someone ghosts you, it's not because you're not worth a conversation. It's because they lack the emotional maturity to have difficult conversations. When someone betrays you, it's not because you're not worth loyalty. It's because they don't understand what loyalty means. When someone disrespects you, it's not because you don't deserve respect. It's because they don't know how to give it. Your silence acknowledges this truth without having to explain it to them. It says, I see that this is who you are right now, and I'm not going to try to change you. I'm not going to try to teach you how to treat people. I'm not going to try to convince you to be better. I'm simply going to remove myself from the equation. This isn't giving up on people. This is giving up on the illusion that you can control how other people behave. This is giving up on the fantasy that if you just say the right words, make the right argument, or show enough vulnerability, you can make someone care about you who has chosen not to. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire. It's the practice of wanting what is, not what you wish was. It's accepting reality as it is, not as you think it should be. And when you truly accept that some people are not capable of giving you what you deserve, your silence becomes an act of self-love, not self-punishment. But here's where most people get stuck. They think that staying silent means they're letting people get away with bad behavior. They think it means they're weak, passive, or doormat-like. They think it means they don't have boundaries. This couldn't be further from the truth. Your silence is the strongest boundary you can set. It's saying, I will not engage with disrespect. I will not participate in toxicity. I will not waste my energy trying to change someone who doesn't want to change. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's not passivity. That's power. That's not being a doormat. That's being a fortress. When you master this level of emotional discipline, you start to attract different types of people into your life, because the energy you put out determines the energy you receive back. When you stop tolerating disrespect, disrespectful people stop being attracted to you. When you stop chasing unavailable people, available people start showing up. When you stop explaining your worth, people who already see it start gravitating toward you. This is the law of attraction that no one talks about. It's not about visualizing what you want. It's about embodying the energy of someone who already has what they want. And people who already have love don't chase it. People who already have respect don't beg for it. People who already have worth don't explain it. Your silence becomes the evidence of your inner abundance. It shows that you're not operating from a place of lack, desperation, or need. It shows that you're complete within yourself, and anything else is just a bonus, not a necessity. This shifts the entire dynamic of how you show up in relationships. Instead of asking, how can I make them love me? You start asking, are they capable of loving me the way I deserve to be loved? Instead of wondering, what did I do wrong? You start wondering, is this person emotionally available for the kind of connection I'm seeking? Instead of trying to fix people, you start selecting people who don't need fixing. Instead of making excuses for people's behavior, you start accepting their behavior as information about who they are right now. Your silence becomes a form of discernment. It helps you separate what people say from what they do. It helps you see past potential and focus on reality. It helps you stop falling in love with who someone could be and start dealing with who they actually are. And when you operate from this place of clarity, everything changes. You stop wasting time on people who aren't ready for you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to convince people to choose you. You stop settling for crumbs from people who should be offering you the whole meal. This is what it means to honor yourself. This is what it means to love yourself. This is what it means to respect yourself. Not in some abstract, theoretical way, but in practical daily choices about how you spend your time, energy, and attention. Your silence isn't just about other people. It's about you. It's about choosing yourself when others won't. It's about protecting your peace when others try to disturb it. It's about valuing your energy when others try to drain it. And the beautiful thing is, when you consistently choose yourself in this way, you start to become the kind of person you've always wanted to attract. You become emotionally stable, self-assured, and grounded in your own worth. You become someone who doesn't need external validation because you've learned to validate yourself. This is the ultimate freedom, the freedom from needing others to complete you, approve of you, or understand you. The freedom to walk away from situations that don't serve you without explaining yourself. The freedom to be misunderstood without losing sleep over it. This freedom doesn't come overnight. It's built through countless small moments where you choose silence over explanation, dignity over drama, peace over proving a point. Each time you make this choice, you're training yourself to become unshakable. You're building the kind of inner strength that can't be bought, borrowed, or given to you by someone else. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about the people who matter to you? What about family, close friends, romantic partners? Does this principle of silence apply to them too? Here's where wisdom meets discernment. The Stoics weren't advocating for becoming a hermit or cutting off all human connection. They were teaching us to recognize the difference between people who've earned access to our inner world and those who haven't. The people who truly love you will never make you beg for their attention. They won't leave you guessing about where you stand. They won't make you explain your worth because they already see it. These relationships don't require silence as a tool because they're built on mutual respect and genuine care. But even with people you love, there are moments when silence serves you better than words. When someone you care about is having an emotional breakdown and wants to drag you into their chaos, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remain calm and centered rather than matching their energy. When someone close to you is trying to manipulate you through guilt or emotional blackmail, your silence can be the boundary that protects the relationship from becoming toxic. The key is understanding the difference between strategic silence and emotional withdrawal. Strategic silence is conscious, purposeful, and rooted in self-respect. Emotional withdrawal is reactive, punitive, and rooted in hurt. One builds bridges, the other burns them. When you're operating from strategic silence, you're not trying to punish anyone. You're simply refusing to participate in dynamics that diminish you. You're creating space for people to show you who they really are without the influence of your emotional reactions clouding their behavior. And here's something beautiful that happens when you master this distinction. You start to become a calming presence in other people's lives. Because you're not reactive, people feel safe around you. Because you don't get pulled into drama, you become someone others turn to when they need stability. Because you don't take things personally, you become someone who can offer genuine wisdom and perspective. Your silence becomes a gift not just to yourself, but to others. It gives them space to process their own emotions without feeling like they need to manage yours, too. It allows them to make their own choices without feeling pressured or manipulated. It creates an environment where authentic connection can actually flourish. Think about the people in your life who have this quality. They're the ones who listen more than they speak. They're the ones who remain calm when everyone else is losing their minds. They're the ones who don't feel the need to have an opinion about everything or insert themselves into every conversation. There's something magnetic about their presence, something trustworthy about their character. This is what you become when you learn to wield silence as a tool of wisdom rather than a weapon of war. You become someone who doesn't need to announce their strength because it radiates from their being. You become someone who doesn't need to demand respect because they command it naturally. But this transformation requires you to let go of some deeply ingrained habits. You have to release the need to have the last word in every argument. You have to surrender the compulsion to correct every misunderstanding. You have to abandon the urge to defend yourself against every criticism. This doesn't mean you become a pushover. It means you become selective about which battles are worth your energy. It means you start fighting for things that actually matter, instead of wasting your ammunition on every small skirmish that comes your way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." But he also wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Your silence isn't about avoiding all conflict. It's about choosing your conflicts wisely and engaging only when there's something meaningful to be gained or protected. When someone attacks your character, your silence says you're confident enough in who you are that you don't need to defend it to people who've already made up their minds. When someone tries to provoke you into an argument, your silence says you're too mature to be manipulated by their emotional immaturity. When someone expects you to chase after them, your silence says you value yourself too much to beg for what should be freely given. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of strategic silence is how it changes your relationship with time. When you stop wasting hours crafting the perfect response to people who don't deserve your words, you suddenly have more time for things that actually matter. When you stop getting caught up in endless back-and-forth conversations that go nowhere, you have more energy for relationships that actually nourish you. Time is the most precious resource you have, and every minute you spend trying to convince someone of your worth is a minute you could have spent creating something valuable, loving someone who loves you back, or investing in your own growth and happiness. The Stoics understood that life is short and unpredictable. They practiced something called memento mori, remembering that death comes for everyone. Not to be morbid, but to stay focused on what truly matters. And what truly matters is rarely the opinion of someone who's already decided not to respect you. Your silence becomes an investment in your future self. Every time you choose not to react, you're building emotional resilience. Every time you choose not to explain yourself to people who won't listen, you're building self-respect. Every time you choose not to chase someone who's walking away, you're building the kind of magnetic energy that draws the right people toward you. This is compound interest for the soul. Each moment of silence builds upon the last, creating a foundation of inner strength that becomes unshakable over time. People start to notice that you can't be rattled, that you can't be manipulated, that you can't be controlled by their emotional outbursts or passive-aggressive behavior. They start to see you as someone who operates from a different level of consciousness, someone who doesn't get pulled into petty drama because they're focused on bigger things, someone who doesn't need constant validation because they've found validation within themselves. And here's what happens when you reach this level of emotional mastery. You start to attract people who operate from the same level. You start to connect with others who understand that real strength is quiet, that real confidence doesn't announce itself, that real love doesn't require games or manipulation. Your silence becomes a filter that screens out people who aren't ready for genuine connection and draws in those who are. It separates the wheat from the chaff, the authentic from the superficial, the mature from the immature. But remember, this isn't about becoming cold or disconnected from your emotions. It's about becoming the master of your emotions instead of their slave. It's about feeling everything fully but choosing your responses consciously instead of reactively. When someone hurts you, you still feel the pain, but you don't let that pain drive you to behaviors that compromise your dignity. When someone disappoints you, you still feel the disappointment, but you don't let that disappointment make you chase after people who've shown you they're not reliable. Your silence becomes the space between feeling and reacting. It's the pause that allows wisdom to enter before words leave your mouth. It's the buffer that protects you from making decisions based on temporary emotions that could have permanent consequences. This is what emotional intelligence actually looks like. Not the ability to manipulate others through emotional tactics, but the ability to manage your own emotional responses in a way that serves your highest good and maintains your integrity. And when you consistently operate from this place of emotional sovereignty, something magical happens. You stop victim of other people's behavior and start being the author of your own experience. You stop giving your power away to every person who triggers you, and start keeping it centered within yourself where it belongs. Your silence isn't the absence of power, it's the presence of it. It's power so secure in itself that it doesn't need to announce its presence or prove its worth. It simply is, and that being is enough. This is the path the Stoics walked thousands of years ago, and it's still available to you today. Not because the world has become easier, but because the principles of inner strength remain timeless. In a world that's louder, more chaotic, and more demanding of your attention than ever before, your ability to remain silent in the face of noise becomes not just valuable, but essential. Your silence isn't running away from life. It's running toward a better version of yourself. A version that doesn't need external validation to feel worthy, doesn't need others' approval to make decisions, and doesn't need constant noise to feel alive. This version of you is waiting on the other side of every moment, where you choose silence over reaction, dignity over drama, wisdom over winning. And each choice you make in this direction brings you closer to the kind of unshakable inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is really about. Not controlling others through silence, but freeing yourself through it. Not punishing people who've wronged you, but protecting yourself from further harm. Not winning arguments, but winning back your peace of mind. Your silence is your sanctuary in a noisy world. Your silence is your strength in a reactive culture. Your silence is your freedom in a society that tries to keep you enslaved to other people's opinions and expectations. And when you truly embrace this freedom, you discover something that changes everything. Your silence becomes your teacher, not just about other people, but about yourself. In the quiet moments when you choose not to react, you start hearing things you never noticed before. The voice of your intuition, the whisper of your values, the clear direction of your authentic self. Most people live their entire lives drowning out this inner voice with constant noise. They fill every uncomfortable moment with words, distractions, explanations, reactions. But when you learn to sit in silence, when you learn to be comfortable with the space between action and reaction, you start accessing a level of wisdom that no external source can provide. This is where the real transformation happens, not in how others see you, but in how clearly you see yourself. Your silence strips away all the masks you wear to please other people. It removes all the performances you put on to fit in. It dissolves all the explanations you give to justify your existence to people who never asked for them. What remains is the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And for many people, this is terrifying. They've spent so long defining themselves through other people's reactions that they don't know who they are when no one else is watching. They've become so addicted to external validation that silence feels like death. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that this temporary death of the ego is actually the birth of something far more powerful, your authentic self. The part of you that doesn't need anyone else's permission to exist, doesn't require anyone else's approval to have value, doesn't depend on anyone else's understanding to feel complete. Seneca wrote extensively about this process. He called it the daily practice of dying to who you were, so you could be reborn as who you're meant to become. Every time you choose silence over the urge to defend yourself, you're practicing this death. You're killing the part of you that needs external validation and feeding the part of you that generates validation from within. This isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice to trust your inner compass instead of looking to others for direction. A consistent decision to value your own peace more than other people's understanding of you. But let's get practical here, because philosophy without application is just pretty words. How do you actually live this way when everything in your conditioning screams at you to react, to explain, to chase, to prove? You start small. The next time someone sends you a message that would normally trigger a long defensive response, you pause, you breathe. You ask yourself, does this person deserve my energy right now? Will explaining myself to them actually change anything? Or am I just feeding my own ego's need to be understood? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be clear. Your silence serves you better than your words ever could. The next time someone cancels plans at the last minute, instead of telling them how inconsiderate they are, you simply don't make plans with them again. Your silence becomes the natural consequence of their behavior. You don't have to punish them. Their actions punish themselves by removing them from your life. The next time someone tries to drag you into gossip or drama, instead of defending the person being talked about or joining in the conversation, you simply change the subject or walk away. Your silence communicates that you don't participate in that kind of energy without you having to preach about it. These small acts of strategic silence start to compound. People begin to notice that you can't be baited into arguments. They start to see that you don't get pulled into emotional chaos. They begin to understand that your peace is not negotiable and your dignity is not for sale. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. You're training yourself to become unshakable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've learned to let things affect you without controlling you. You feel the full range of human emotions without being enslaved by them. When someone betrays you, you feel the pain, but you don't let that pain drive you to behaviors that compromise your self-respect. When someone rejects you, you feel the disappointment, but you don't let that disappointment make you chase after people who've shown you they don't want to be caught. Your silence creates space between the stimulus and your response. In that space lies your freedom. The freedom to choose how you want to show up, regardless of how others are showing up. The freedom to maintain your standards, even when others lower theirs. The freedom to keep your dignity intact, even when others are losing theirs. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Your silence is the practical application of this principle. It's how you exercise that power over your mind in real-world situations. But let's address something important. Your silence doesn't mean you never speak up for yourself. It doesn't mean you become a doormat or let people walk all over you. It means you become strategic about when and how you engage. There's a difference between someone who stays silent out of fear and someone who chooses silence from a place of power. Fear-based silence says, "I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to make waves. I don't want to upset anyone." Power-based silence says, "My energy is precious. My words have value. I choose where and when to invest them." The person operating from fear stays quiet because they're afraid of conflict. The person operating from power stays quiet because they understand that not every conflict deserves their participation. One is avoiding life. The other is mastering it. When you reach this level of discernment, you start to see clearly which situations require your voice and which ones don't. When someone you love is struggling and needs your support, you speak up. When injustice is happening and you have the power to address it, you act. When your values are being compromised and your silence would be complicity, you find your voice. But when someone is trying to manipulate you through emotional outbursts, you stay silent. When people are gossiping about others and want you to join in, you walk away. When someone is trying to drag you into their chaos because they can't sit with their own discomfort, you refuse to participate. Your silence becomes a form of boundaries, not walls that keep everyone out, but filters that determine who gets access to your energy and under what circumstances. You become like a high-end restaurant that doesn't serve everyone who walks in, but provides an exceptional experience for those who meet their standards. This selectivity isn't arrogance. It's self-preservation. It's recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are finite resources that should be invested wisely, not scattered carelessly to anyone who demands them. The ancient Stoics lived in a world just as chaotic as ours. They dealt with wars, plagues, political upheaval, personal betrayals, and family drama. Yet they found a way to remain centered, focused, and at peace, regardless of external circumstances. How? Through practices exactly like this one. They understood that peace isn't the absence of chaos around you. It's the presence of stillness within you. They knew that strength isn't the ability to control others. It's the discipline to control yourself. They realized that freedom isn't getting everything you want. It's wanting what you have and being complete within yourself. Your silence connects you to this ancient wisdom. It links you to a tradition of human beings who refused to be victims of their circumstances and instead became masters of their responses. You're not just choosing not to speak. You're choosing to join the ranks of people throughout history who understood that true power is internal, not external. But this path isn't for everyone. Most people will never understand why you don't defend yourself against every criticism. They won't comprehend why you don't chase after people who walk away. They won't grasp why you don't explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands you. And that's okay. Your silence isn't about them understanding you. It's about you understanding yourself. It's about you recognizing your own worth so deeply that you don't need external validation to confirm it. It's about you being so grounded in your own truth that other people's opinions become irrelevant. When you reach this place, something beautiful happens. You stop being reactive to life and start being creative with it. Instead of spending your energy responding to what others do to you, you start focusing that energy on creating the life you actually want to live. You stop wasting time trying to change people who don't want to change and start surrounding yourself with people who inspire growth. You stop exhausting yourself explaining your choices to people who will criticize them anyway and start making choices that align with your values regardless of what others think. Your silence becomes the foundation for a life of intentionality rather than reactivity, a life of purpose rather than chaos, a life of inner peace rather than external validation. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's built through countless moments where you choose differently than you used to, where you pause instead of reacting, where you observe instead of judging, where you detach instead of engaging. Each time you make this choice, you're strengthening the muscle of self-control. You're building the habit of responding from wisdom rather than emotion. You're developing the kind of inner stability that can weather any storm. And storms will come. People will test your resolve. They'll try to provoke you into old patterns. They'll attempt to drag you back into the chaos you've worked so hard to leave behind. Your silence in these moments isn't just about the immediate situation. It's about who you're becoming. It's about the person you're training yourself to be. It's about the legacy you're building through your daily choices. Because every time you choose silence over reaction, you're voting for the version of yourself that is calm, centered, and unshakable. Every time you choose dignity over drama, you're strengthening your commitment to living with integrity. Every time you choose peace over proving a point, you're investing in your own emotional well-being. These votes add up. These choices compound. These moments of silence create a life of substance, meaning, and genuine power. Not the kind of power that dominates others, but the kind that liberates yourself. This is the ultimate gift your silence gives you. Not just protection from toxic people and situations, but freedom to become who you were always meant to be. Freedom to live according to your values instead of others' expectations. Freedom to find peace in a chaotic world and strength in uncertain times. Your silence isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better one. A story where you're the author, not just a character reacting to what others write. A story where your worth isn't determined by external validation, but by internal alignment. A story where your peace isn't dependent on perfect circumstances, but on your perfect response to imperfect ones. The Stoics knew that this kind of life was possible for anyone willing to do the inner work. They proved it through their own examples, their own choices, their own commitment to wisdom over convenience. And now, it's your turn to prove it too. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the quiet courage of choosing silence when everything in you wants to scream. Through the gentle strength of walking away when everything in you wants to fight. Through the profound wisdom of valuing your peace more than anyone else's understanding of you. This is your invitation, not to become cold or disconnected, but to become powerful and free. Not to avoid all relationships, but to engage in them from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. Not to stop caring about others, but to start caring about yourself in the same way you care about those you love most. Your silence is waiting for you. It's been waiting your entire life for you to recognize its power, embrace its wisdom, and trust its guidance. The question isn't whether you can learn to live this way. The question is whether you're ready to start, because every moment you delay is another moment you give your power to people who never earned it in the first place. Every second you spend explaining yourself to deaf ears is a second you could spend building something beautiful with people who actually see your worth. The fourth principle cuts deeper than everything we've discussed so far. Your silence doesn't just protect you from toxic people. It reveals who you really are when nobody's watching, when nobody's applauding, when nobody's validating your choices or confirming your worth. Strip away all the noise, all the opinions, all the external voices telling you who you should be, and what remains. That's the question your silence forces you to confront. And for most people, it's terrifying, because they've spent so long defining themselves through other people's reactions that they don't know who they are in the absence of feedback. But this confrontation with your authentic self is where real power is born. Not the power to control others, but the power to be completely yourself, regardless of who's around to witness it. The power to make decisions based on your values instead of other people's expectations. The power to love yourself, even when others don't understand you. Epictetus spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's greatest teachers. He understood better than most what it means to have your external freedom stripped away. Yet in his teachings, he emphasized that no one could touch your inner freedom unless you handed it over voluntarily. Your silence is you refusing to hand over that inner freedom. It's you saying, "You can control your actions toward me, but you cannot control my response. You can choose not to respect me, but you cannot force me to disrespect myself. You can walk away from me, but you cannot make me abandon who I am." This level of inner sovereignty isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you choose moment by moment, day by day, in the small decisions that nobody else sees. When your phone buzzes with a message from someone who's been disrespecting you, and you choose not to respond immediately. When you feel the urge to defend yourself in a group chat where people are talking about you, and you choose to let their words say more about them than your reaction says about you. When you're lying in bed at night and your mind starts replaying all the things you wish you'd said to someone who hurt you, and you choose to redirect that energy towards something that actually serves your future, instead of dwelling on a past you can't change. These moments of choosing silence over reaction are like deposits in an emotional bank account. Each one builds your capacity to remain stable when everything around you is chaos. Each one strengthens your ability to stay centered when others are losing their minds. Each one proves to yourself that you can be trusted to protect your own peace. But let's talk about what happens when you've been practicing this for a while. When your silence has become a natural response instead of a forced discipline. Something shifts in how you move through the world. People start to notice that you can't be easily disturbed. They begin to see that you operate from a different frequency than most people. You become someone others turn to when they need calm energy. You become someone people trust because they know you won't react emotionally to their problems or make their struggles about yourself. You become someone who creates space for others to be authentic because you're not constantly performing or seeking validation. This transformation isn't just about how others perceive you. It's about how you perceive yourself. When you consistently choose silence over reaction, you start to trust yourself in ways you never have before. You start to believe that you can handle whatever life throws at you because you've proven to yourself that you can handle your own emotional responses to difficult situations. That self-trust becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. It gives you the confidence to take risks because you know you can handle failure. It gives you the courage to be vulnerable because you know you can handle rejection. It gives you the strength to love deeply because you know you can handle loss. Your silence isn't just protecting you from toxic people and situations. It's building the kind of inner resilience that allows you to engage with life fully without being destroyed by its inevitable difficulties. Marcus Aurelius wrote his personal reflections, never intending for them to be published. They were private conversations with himself, reminders of how he wanted to show up in the world, regardless of what that world threw at him. In those pages, he constantly returned to the same themes. Focus on what you can control. Don't waste energy on what you can't. Remember that other people's actions reflect their character, not yours. These weren't abstract philosophical concepts to him. They were practical tools for navigating the daily challenges of leadership, relationships, and personal growth. They were the mental frameworks that allowed him to remain calm during wars, centered during political upheaval, and compassionate despite constant betrayal. Your silence connects you to this same tradition of practical wisdom. It's not about becoming a hermit or avoiding all human connection. It's about engaging with the world from a place of inner strength rather than inner neediness. It's about showing up as someone who has something to offer rather than someone who's constantly trying to get something. When you operate from this place, everything changes. Your relationships become more authentic because you're not performing for approval. Your work becomes more meaningful because you're not seeking external validation for every decision. Your daily life becomes more peaceful because you're not constantly defending yourself against real or imagined slights. But perhaps most importantly, your silence teaches you to listen, not just to others, but to yourself, to the quiet voice of your intuition that gets drowned out when you're constantly reacting to external noise, to the wisdom that emerges when you create space between what happens to you and how you respond to what happens to you. Most people live their entire lives never hearing this inner voice because they're too busy responding to everyone else's voices. They're so concerned with what others think, what others want, what others expect, that they never pause long enough to discover what they think, what they want, what they expect from themselves. Your silence creates that pause. It gives you access to a level of self-knowledge that most people never develop. You start to understand your own patterns, your own triggers, your own values at a deeper level. You begin to see clearly what serves you and what doesn't, what energizes you and what drains you, what aligns with your authentic self and what pulls you away from it. This self-knowledge becomes your compass in a world that's constantly trying to tell you which direction to go. Instead of following the crowd or seeking approval from others, you start following your own inner guidance. You make decisions based on what feels right to you, not what looks good to others. And here's what's beautiful about this process. The more aligned you become with your authentic self, the more attractive you become to others who are also aligned with their authentic selves. Your silence filters out people who are looking for someone to complete them and draws in people who are already complete within themselves. These are the relationships that actually nourish you. These are the connections that add value to your life rather than draining it. These are the people who appreciate your silence because they understand that it comes from a place of strength, not weakness. But this journey requires you to let go of some deeply held beliefs about what it means to be a good person, a loyal friend, a loving partner. You have to release the idea that you owe everyone an explanation for your choices. You have to surrender the notion that keeping peace means keeping quiet when you should speak up, or speaking up when you should stay quiet. You have to abandon the belief that your worth is determined by how much others need you, want you, or approve of you. You have to accept that some people will misinterpret your silence as coldness, your boundaries as rejection, your self-respect as arrogance. And that's okay, because the people who truly matter will understand. The people who are meant to be in your life will appreciate your authenticity even when they don't fully understand it. The people who love you will respect your boundaries, even when they don't agree with them. Your silence becomes a bridge between who you used to be and who you're becoming. It's the space where transformation happens, not the dramatic overnight kind of change that makes for good stories, but the quiet, steady kind of growth that makes for a good life. Every time you choose not to react to someone's provocation, you're choosing to become someone who can't be easily provoked. Every time you choose not to chase after someone who's walking away, you're choosing to become someone who doesn't need to chase because they attract what's meant for them. Every time you choose not to explain yourself to someone who's determined to misunderstand you, you're choosing to become someone who doesn't need external validation to feel secure in their choices. These choices compound over time, creating a version of yourself that you might not even recognize compared to who you used to be. A version that doesn't get pulled into drama because they're focused on their own growth. A version that doesn't need constant reassurance because they've learned to reassure themselves. A version that doesn't fear being alone because they've learned to enjoy their own company. This transformation isn't always comfortable. There will be moments when your old patterns feel safer than your new boundaries. There will be times when explaining yourself feels easier than trusting that your actions speak for themselves. There will be days when chasing after someone feels more familiar than walking away with dignity. But each time you resist those old patterns, you're building something new, something stronger, something more sustainable. You're creating a life that doesn't depend on other people's cooperation to be peaceful. You're developing a sense of self that doesn't require external confirmation to remain stable. The Stoics called this process the discipline of assent. It's the practice of choosing your thoughts, choosing your reactions, choosing your responses instead of being chosen by them. It's the recognition that between every stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies your freedom. Your silence isn't just a tool you use when people disrespect you. It's who you become when you finally understand that your worth doesn't require their approval. It's the person you transform into when you stop giving your power away to everyone who demands it. If this video changed something inside you, if you felt that shift from reactive to responsive, from desperate to dignified, then your journey has already begun. Like this video right now, share it with someone who's tired of chasing people who don't appreciate them. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom that actually changes lives. Most importantly, practice this today, tomorrow. Every time someone tries to pull you into their chaos, remember this moment. Remember that your silence is your sanctuary, your strength, your freedom. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. Let your silence do the work while you become unshakable.